I'm a writer. I have written 27 novels, and most of them, depending on the series, involve witches of some kind and magic, crystals and different things like that. I just always have been attracted to that kind of stuff. And then as I learned to sort of run my own publishing company and publish my own books and found some success with that, I started really getting a passion for teaching other people how to do it in a way that is not just about the hustle, how to make money, but how to really allow your writing and your creativity to be a part of your personal growth journey, your soul work, and to really enjoy the process instead of it just being about how can I write as fast as possible and put out a bunch of books, which I feel like is what a lot of people in self-publishing kind of teach. So those are my two sides to my passion, I guess. And I just love it.
We know that you were born magical. We know that you are intuitive, and we know that you are brimming with everyday enchantment. Here at the Sisters Enchanted, we believe in intention, we believe in intuition, and we believe in everyday magic. Welcome in to the Expedition to Soul podcast. Welcome to this episode of the Expedition to Soul podcast. I'm Sarah, founder of the Sisters Enchanted. And today we are joined by another Sarra Cannon, who is a fabulously witchy person and who writes fabulous books for anybody who's interested in witch fantasy novel type, juicy novels and juicy fiction that you don't want to put down. And Sarah does other things too, like teach people how to write. And you are a wonder of a person with lots of things going on. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you give us the quick who you are, where you are, that kind of stuff.
That was such a great intro. I feel like I'm special hearing all of that. No, I'm a writer. I have written 27 novels, and most of them, depending on the series, involve witches of some kind and magic, crystals and different things like that. I just always have been attracted to that kind of stuff. And then as I learned to sort of run my own publishing company and publish my own books and found some success with that, I started really getting a passion for teaching other people how to do it in a way that is not just about the hustle, how to make money, but how to really allow your writing and your creativity to be a part of your personal growth journey, your soul work, and to really enjoy the process instead of it just being about how can I write as fast as possible and put out a bunch of books, which I feel like is what a lot of people in self-publishing kind of teach. So those are my two sides to my passion, I guess. And I just love it.
Yeah, that is so good. And we were talking just a minute before we started about the things you do, they have a similar thread going through them, but also so different. And you have young kids. So I definitely want to get into that in a bit, just like how you, how you do all the things. I was looking at your website and you have a couple, but the website for your books in particular, in your headline, Caster of Spells and Teller of Tales. And I was like, oh my gosh, she needs a black, spooky, and some fog. So let's begin with what started your interest in all things witchy and magical, and because I know that you do moon rituals and you love all the witch things. It sounds like me, it was just you were kind of born this way, but when did it first start to appear, and particularly in your adult life? Think about what life would look like if you had the foundation to do the shadow work, understand where you're holding yourself back, and the confidence to bring some everyday magic elements into your life, follow your intuition, and know exactly the steps forward for you. Well, that's what we teach you and more in our Holistic Witchery program. Be sure to get on the wait list for Holistic Witchery. It's the one class we think everybody should take here at the Sisters Enchanted. It has changed so many lives and is at the core of all of our fundamental beliefs about who we are and how we propel ourselves forward in a way that makes great change for ourselves and those around us. Check out holisticwitchery.com, get on the wait list, and we can't wait to welcome you into class just as soon as enrollment opens.
So, it did appear definitely when I was younger. I grew up in a log cabin that my dad built in the middle of the woods, and we were just surrounded by acres of wooded forest, which sounds like the perfect place for a witchy person to grow up. And we didn't have air conditioning, and it was southern Georgia. So it was very hot inside the house, and it was often cooler in the woods than it was in the house because of the shade of the trees and stuff. So, I grew up just exploring and finding little creeks and picking out rocks and different things. And I think that that connection with nature just is what really started it for me. But then also the only way, like, I did not get along well with my sister. She was very, very different from me, still is. And we just didn't get along well when we were younger. And then when I hit my teen years and she went off to college, she would come home on the weekends, and she worked at a video warehouse, which is like, kids these days don't even understand what it's
Yeah.
like to go and try to pick out a videotape to watch on the weekends. But she would bring home like horror and different kind of movies like that. And I think just being introduced to sort of like scary movies or spooky movies, and then sometimes the witches that come along with that, really ignited a piece of my imagination, and it allowed me to bond with my sister in ways that we hadn't. And then that turned to like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and different types of TV shows that we binge watched together. So that was kind of that early days. And then I went to school for singing and opera, and everything got very like serious all the time, like something very different from what I do now. And when I sort of came out of that, so I didn't really have any connection with nature or witchiness or anything during that time period of like college, time. And then when I came out of that, I kind of went through a spiritual reawakening through some things that had happened, just like that sort of trying to figure out who I really am in the world, which I think a lot of us go through in our early 20s, and just started to feel this pull back toward rituals and getting grounded and trying to find a place where I could hear my own intuition and my own voice again. And that's kind of when I started to remember growing up in the woods and what it felt like to just be quiet in the woods for a while, even though I was living in a city, Indianapolis at the time. That's when I started to come back to it.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. And what I love about that is I, as this is not a podcast about motherhood, but as a mom, I think that there's this discussion all the time about like, should kids watch TV? Should they not watch TV?
Mhm.
And like technology and whatnot. And I think there's arguments on both sides, but I think it's a great story that you do what you do now, like because you watched movies and that, but there is a value to,
Yeah.
we can feel so bad, even as adults, like that we should always be productive or like doing whatever. But these things that just bring us joy can really, ignite who you are.
Yeah. It's like you find a piece of yourself sometimes in those places. And I see that with my son. He plays video games and he likes to design video games. And
Yeah.
he's only 10. So there's always that like screen time kind of balance thing. But a part of where I came from also is the balance of being out in nature too. So it's like utilizing both sides of those things, I think can be a part of sort of finding out who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's talk about these books a little bit. And firstly, there's so many questions I want to ask you. I'm going to give you an overview of what I want to know. I want you to tell the people a little bit about your like epic series that you have here. I want you to tell people about that. And then I also want you to tell people a little bit about what it's like to like your journey into self-publishing, because I self-published a book earlier this year, and I wouldn't say it was overwhelming. Like it was my first one. So the to-do list was like overwhelming, and the tech stuff. And I can see how a lot of people might think that's just not for them. So tell us about the books first. And you write a bunch of series, like a bunch of things, but you have like one big series, right? That's kind of your like namesake.
Yeah.
Right. Tell us about
So my longest running, most popular series is called the Shadow Demons Saga. And it is total right now between the main series and the spinoffs is 17 novels right now. And there's one last book to come. And I've been writing this since 2010. So the first book in the series is called Beautiful Demons. And that's the very first book I published back in 2010. So I have been with these characters for a very long time. And it's always interesting and strange to go back and kind of explain the first book, because it's such a tiny part now of the whole world, like how the story gets started. But for those of you that aren't familiar with it, Beautiful Demons is about a girl who is been kicked out of a lot of foster homes because when she gets angry, she throws things across the room, except she's not actually throwing them. They're moving on their own, and she doesn't understand where this power is coming from. She feels all alone in the world. And so they send her at the very beginning of the book to a place called Shatterford Home for Girls. And it's a place where they send troubled girls. But as you go through, you'll start to learn that there are secrets, witchy secrets to this Shatterford home. And so she arrives in this town called Peachville and starts to very quickly understand that this small town is a town of witches, and she plays a role in that. And essentially the book itself is a murder mystery, because Harper, who is meant to have her final shot at getting her life together, makes enemies with one of the head cheerleaders on day one. And then when that cheerleader turns up mysteriously dead, signs point to Harper. So she has to solve the mystery to prove that she did not do it. So it's got that murder mystery side to it, and then the witchy side to it. And then as you go through this long epic series, it crosses worlds, and there's a big evil organization and all those kind of fun things that I love about big stories. And it even branches into vampires and werewolves and other creatures of the night, so to speak. But I have really poured my heart and soul into this, and writing the final book has been a journey in and of itself.
I bet.
Oh my gosh. Thinking about that path to getting to self-publish, I left a teaching job. I was teaching music, and it's that listening to your own intuition of like, I loved working with children and I loved being a teacher, but I also knew this was not where I was meant to be forever. And so I quit that job and decided to become a writer. And it was something I had always wanted to do, but didn't really know how to write a book. So it took me several years of teaching private voice lessons on the side to learn how to write a book. And then I thought, I'm going to go the traditional publishing route. Of course, back in 2008, 2009, there weren't as many, like Kindle was just coming out, it was very different kind of landscape with ebooks. And I got involved with a lot of writers who said, oh, I've spent 15 years trying to get a publishing deal, and now that I have it, I'm only making, $4,000 a year as a writer. And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? And then I started to see that these books were popping up on Kindle that were self-published. How do you do this? Are you making money? And I started scouring the world to, the blog world, to figure out if anybody was talking about how they were doing it. And just finally one summer decided, I got the word believe tattooed on my wrist and said, I'm just going to believe in myself, and I'm going to take this leap to self-publish instead of going the traditional route. And everybody told me I was crazy and this was the dumbest idea ever. And then within a year, they were all saying, can you teach me how you did it?
Yeah. So good. It is. I think that there is I hear from a lot of people around publishing, like, about the traditional publishing route. And this is like a whole other topic for conversation, but I think, people really have to, like, what's your end game? But if it's to be your career, unless you're like Neil Gaiman or Stephen King, like it's not what one would think when it comes to financial income, and self-publishing is definitely a viable career, especially if you have somebody help, like a guide like you can help people with,
Yeah, I think it's what's cool about self-publishing is that you can really write what you love. And there are teachers out there that will say, no, you have to write to market in order to make money. But I just don't see that is really the truth. I think maybe if you want to be at the top of Amazon. Sure, maybe you want to write more to market or something like that, but you can make a really good full-time living just writing truly whatever you want. And you don't have to worry about the gatekeepers that, traditional publishing, they're having to look at what's selling in the market right now. But when you have the entire market at your fingertips, you can really and truly just write what you want and figure out your way of reaching the people that want to read those books. And I think it's really exciting, and it's really powerful, and it's great, but it changes constantly. And that's kind of where the struggle is, to do it all and to keep up with it is like, oh gosh, any type of marketing online these days is like that. It's like what worked 2 years ago maybe not doesn't work now. So,
That is very true.
yeah.
Every day is a surprise
It is.
when you work on the internet. Just never know what's going to happen. So what is there anybody in your life who thinks that your love of all things, a little horror, a little witchy, a little wonderfully different, do you get any pushback from anybody in your life around these kinds of topics, or your interest in them, or that you're doing like rituals on YouTube and things? Because I know that I have people in my life who don't even want to, like the Sisters Enchanted, we've had thousands of students, and people still don't want to like acknowledge, that I do this really cool thing. And people who come to our community are often unsure of how to tell, like maybe a spouse or a family member or like a parent, that they even want to buy a deck of tarot cards or something.
Yeah.
So what's that look like for you? Any pushback or like instances or things you want to say about that?
It was definitely an issue when I was younger, like when I was still in my parents' household, because it was a very like we go to church 3 times a week sort of household. And my mom didn't know what to do with this. Is this against the church kind of thing when it comes to witchy like things that you love? And so she just really kind of tried to pull me away from that and say, this isn't something we need to talk about, that sort of thing. So I really did, other than with my small group of friends, kind of keep that part of my life under wraps for a really long time. And now I feel like I've really cultivated people around me that understand this is just a part of my spiritual life, is my connection to nature, my connection to my own intuition and my beliefs in that way. And I feel like even if I have a few friends that don't believe what I believe, or think that, they're like, crystals are just rocks, whatever, it's fine. Or they don't really understand tarot. They don't want to talk about it. They definitely don't want me to read their cards or anything, because they feel like there's something bad or taboo about it. But for the most part, I feel like people are more interested to know, how does that work? How do you incorporate that into your life? And I do weekly YouTube lives for my reader audience on my YouTube channel. And a lot of times, if it's a new moon coming up or a full moon, we'll do some little just basic kind of rituals, or we'll talk about manifesting, or we'll talk about how tarot, like I'll pull a tarot card. And I'm finding more and more people are like, that have been hesitant in the past, are interested in, oh, well, I can see how that tarot card just was a sign for you of what you already felt in your intuition you knew was true. And I think that really appeals to people.
Yeah. I love it. And I love that you mentioned about your mom, because I know that we've had people share. We have one community member who wanted to take our holistic witchery class, and they are Orthodox Christian. And like she talked to her husband and their priest about it. And it was, she joined us in the end, but I can see where people, it can be challenging to navigate the waters.
Yeah.
In
My
that
husband
area.
is Catholic, and he goes to Catholic church every Sunday, and he is very accepting, and he'll even say to me, maybe you need to draw a tarot card and see what it says, because he over the years has really seen the signs and the truth of it. I'll excitedly show him at night. I'll be like, this is exactly what we were just talking about. Here's this card. And he's like, what does that mean? And I'll explain it to him, and he'll be like, oh my gosh, that's just exactly what we were talking about. And so I think the more he sees the evidence of it, the more he understands that it's not anything that's not spiritual in any way, that it actually is very confirming no matter what your beliefs are. And I think
Yeah.
my passion for it has kind of pulled him over to seeing why it's so important to me.
Yeah. I we have so many things in common. I didn't realize. Well, I guess not so many things, but a couple of things. My husband was raised Catholic. He's not he doesn't go to church. He's not, so I guess he's not a practicing Catholic, but his whole family's Catholic. And I was a former English teacher,
Oh my God.
who is now an internet witch. So I know parallels all around. Before we wrap up and I ask you a little bit of this or that to find out a little more about you, what you did speak to this maybe a little, but a little more, what advice would you have for somebody who wants to do something? And it might be like quitting a job like you and I both did to do something wild, or, maybe they've always wanted to write a book, but they have no idea what to write or think they're not good enough, or just any big thing that seems too far away to possibly happen. You've made a lot of those things happen in your life. So what advice do you have for somebody who's kind of in that place right now?
I think that a lot of times when you look at someone who has like made these big leaps over the course of a decade, or, something like that, that you think, oh, well, they were just born with something different from what I have, or they just don't have the flaws that I have, or they're just naturally motivated. But the truth is that I struggle pretty severely with anxiety a lot and have to work through that. It's a lot of where I turn to my rituals to kind of get me through. And I've been through some traumatic things that have made really believing in myself and feeling safe in taking risks a difficult journey in some ways. So there's not something special about me or something that makes me any different from anyone else. It's really just a matter of, trusting that intuition. I think when we really listen to our hearts, there's always, whether it's a whisper or a shout, sometimes there's, once we really and truly listen, we know what we were meant for. We can feel that pull toward, this isn't where you meant to be. This book keeps nagging at you. You want to do this. And I think the journey to actually taking the leap to doing it is really more of a journey in believing in yourself and just understanding that you would not have been given that particular whisper, that desire, that constant sort of, pull toward this thing if it wasn't meant for you. And trusting that whatever, universe, spirit is within you, is guiding you toward what you were truly meant for. And even though that leap can feel scary, if that's what you're meant for, then you know that you're being guided and you're safe. And that's what I keep reminding myself of. And I also will look for evidence of, okay, so, maybe that like dream life of being a full-time author, or being this other, that there's a gap between where I am now and where I want to be. But if I take a few steps forward and I look for the signs that say you're on the right path, then I always know that as long as I continue to follow my intuition, I'm going to hit that dream, because that's where my life is pulling me toward, kind of like a thread that I'm like following in the dark, and I'm pulling one step at a time. And every once in a while I'll pause and just look for the signs. Is this making a difference? I'll draw a tarot card. Dragonflies are very important to me because of some things that have happened in my life. And I'll say, okay, well then just show me a dragonfly. And I'll literally open up my email, or I will just go for a walk and there's a physical dragonfly there, or I'll open up my email and someone sent me a card just out of the blue, thinking of you, that has a dragonfly fluttering across the screen. And I feel like those signs are out there for all of us if we look for them. And it's just a matter of taking one step in front of the other and understanding that everybody who ever accomplished those things has felt the way that you feel.
Yeah, I can't agree with all of that more. I think there is this misconception that people like yourself, people like me, like know what we're doing.
Yeah.
I couldn't be farther from the truth.
Yeah, like you've got it, like you started with a plan and you've got it all figured out, and the truth is it's just one step, and it's not always the right step. it's sometimes the wrong step, and then you have to backtrack or you have to make a different choice, but nothing is permanent. You could start a podcast and call it something, and then 6 months later say, oh, I don't think that was the right path for me, I'm going to change it. Or you start publishing a book and then you realize, oh, you know what, I really should have been writing this other series. And you can always change your mind and grow as you go, instead of feeling like you have to know the whole path in order to get started. It's really just, what's your next best step? And I think that's where the witchy side of my spirituality is what guides me through, because it's always listening to, okay, what's that next best step? And I think you can feel it in your body when you're connected.
For sure. 100%. Love that. I want to like just highlight that whole section that you just like listen to this wisdom bomb that's coming your way. All right. Before I let you go, we're going to do, it's only, I think it's 6 things. I said 5, but it's 6 things. This or that. You gotta tell me which one you prefer. All right. What's your favorite? Well, not, which do you prefer? The new moon or the full moon? Like, what's your best energy?
New moon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not the same there. I'm a full moon
Oh.
person.
That's
where we part ways.
Yeah. Maybe for me, because I have trouble sometimes with the release of things, like I've holding on to, but I love the idea of manifesting and growth. And so that like that journey from the new moon to the full moon is always, I don't know, but man, I always think full moon means like releasing old things. And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it.
What's this isn't on my list, but do you know your moon sign and your sun sign?
So my sun sign is Aquarius, which I don't really connect to a whole lot. My moon sign is Pisces, which does make a lot of sense for me, but it's my rising sign is Virgo, and that is much more like, it's much more me. And actually, when you look at my whole chart, my earth is more, my signs are more earth signs, like heavily in my chart. So I'm still kind of learning more about astrology side of things. But when I heard that it's like majority earth sign, I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, your rising sign, that's how you see it's like your experience of the world. So that paints but that Pisces, for sure, I can see how that could contribute to like an overwhelming feeling of a full moon, like there's so much to get lost in here. And I just, and earth signs align very well with the new moon. So that all makes very much. I'm like fire all the way.
Okay.
So I'm like full moon. Let's do the things, big energy. Okay. So this is a question. Do you prefer to read physical books or digital books? Or like, I guess with digital, audio can be in there also.
Oh, that's so hard. If I'm reading nonfiction, I highly prefer physical books. But when I'm reading fiction, I like to use a device because it's just lighter and it's more comfortable. Yeah. And I like being able to like highlight things without having to mess up a physical book. But when I'm doing nonfiction book, I will highlight in it. But for some reason, when it comes to fiction, like I don't want to highlight, I want to just like preserve it. So when you're using a Kindle or something, you can highlight, you can make notes, you can remember stuff. So plus I tend to spend hours and hours reading, and I feel like it's just so much more comfortable on a device.
Yeah, well, and you can take a lot of books with you anywhere you go. So you grew up in the woods. So are you a person who loves to be on like a big body of water, or do you prefer to be in like a non-water landscape?
So I have always been drawn to the water, and actually just moved to Dallas from Charleston. So I was living on the water, literally on the marsh, like a mile from the beach for the past few years. And for some reason, these last like 6 months or so, our whole family was really just drawn toward being back out in like having our own land. And I have a spiritual counselor, tarot life coach, I guess. And she was saying, well, those years by the water was to get you into flow. And now you need to get grounded. And that's kind of where you are in your journey. So long answer there, but I love them both. I've always been more drawn to water in the past, but I'm feeling such a earthy vibe these days.
Yeah, I love it. I think we all do go through those seasons too, for sure. Are you a coffee or tea kind of person?
Mm. I feel like, but all of these, I'm just like both.
Yeah.
I drink coffee every single morning, every day. I love it. But I have tea every single night before bed. It's just part of my nighttime ritual. And I love iced tea as well. So I drink a lot of iced tea, but herbal teas, I probably drink more tea than I do coffee,
Yeah,
but I also have to start my day with a cup of coffee.
I
So,
get
but
that. Yeah, I totally get that. All right, this will be our last one. So do you prefer tarot cards or oracle cards?
tarot cards, that one's easy for me. I have such a hard time connecting to oracle cards. Maybe I just haven't found the right deck for me, but I have probably 15 different tarot decks,
Yeah,
and a few of them that are just my absolute go-to favorites. And I work with tarot multiple times a day, every single day. And I just love it.
I have to ask you, did you read The Night Circus?
I didn't. Does that
You
have tarot
didn't.
in it? I didn't.
No, but the author of it, made a tarot deck that she created herself, but it was like she only made 100 of them, and I think it was only the major arcana.
Oh my
Years
goodness.
ago she made them, like when the book came out, and it never went anywhere, but it got picked up by a publisher, and the full tarot deck is coming out in November.
That's one of those books that I feel like I know I need to read, that
Yeah,
has been on my list for a long time, but for some reason just haven't.
I feel like you would like it,
Yeah,
and I feel like you would like the tarot deck.
yeah. I'm sure that I would, because probably got all the reds in it that the book has, I would imagine. I don't know. I'll have to go look.
Yeah, I saw just a preview of it, and I think it was like black and white with red. I
Mhm.
think I could be entirely mistaken. I see so many, as I'm sure you do, like things
Yes.
every day that I don't know, it could
Oh
be
yeah.
completely crossing my wires. But I know it's black and white based, and then from there I could be
Yeah.
just
I
communicating.
have a lot of witchy friends that send me like, have you seen this Kickstarter? And I'm like, I
Oh yeah,
can't buy any more tarot decks. I love them all.
I
Uh,
know.
it's easy to get excited about collecting them because the artwork is so beautiful, and I feel like each card is so nuanced that when you see a different artist's interpretation of it, it kind of unlocks a piece of yourself. I have an idea for a set of tarot books that I would like to write, where each of the sisters born into a family control a different piece of the elements, uh,
Oh
a card deck. And someday I will write a tarot, and I would, if I do it, there'll definitely be a tarot deck associated.
yeah, that sounds really cool. I will be waiting for that years from
I
now,
will let you
whenever it comes out.
know.
All right. Well, Sarah, we can find you at sarahcannon.com. I
Yeah.
know. And you have a variety of resources. So we'll be sure to link everything up on the show notes, wherever it is you're watching, listening to this, all the places you'll be able to find it. Um, thank you so much. This was delightful. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. This is super fun.
Yeah. All right, everybody listening, thank you all for listening today. And until next time, we hope that you have a very enchanted rest of your day ahead.